Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. Now, today is December 1st, my dad's birthday. Happy birthday, Pops. But not only is it my dad's birthday, it's also World AIDS Day. And we have a special guest on the line who we haven't seen in a while because of COVID and the pandemic. We have David John. Welcome back, brother.
I appreciate you. It's good to be with y'all virtually. Sad that we can't be together in person.
I like your lighting, David. You got the nice back. It's like dark, but then it's light on you. It's like you got the ring light or something?
I do, yes.
Okay.
It reminds me of Mariah Carey was like, just shine a light on me.
Shine a light on me. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I want.
That's what it is. It's just on you. Nothing else matters. All right.
Now, we always team up with David Johns to do something at Juices for Life, and we do HIV testing, and we always make sure we're very active with that. But this year, obviously, we can't do that. So let's talk about World AIDS Day and even how this pandemic is shifting also some of the concerns that we have.
Yeah, I'm really sad that we can't be together in person. One of the things that I look forward to every year is highlighting the fact that too often our communities, Black and Latinx communities, are most disproportionately affected by things like COVID, by things like HIV, and there's no such thing as democratized healthcare. And so we're able to show up in our communities and provide the resources that we need. What we've seen over the last 4 years is a divestment, a retrenchment from the progress that we have been making prior to the administration that I will not name. And what we also have seen is that so many members of our community, Black folks, Latinx folks, Black LGBTQ folks, have been affected by the COVID exacerbation of this crisis. And so what we saw is that there were a lot of organizations who prior to COVID were investing in reducing stigma around HIV, increasing access to testing, a lot of the things that the National Black Justice Coalition focuses on. But once COVID hit around March, all of that shifted, and then people were looking for the new shiny ball. And so what we know is that there isn't data collected based on people's intersectional identities. There isn't really a lot of data that charted individuals who were living with HIV or who were predisposed to be HIV positive, how they were affected by COVID. But what we know anecdotally is members of our community suffered disproportionately. So it has been a problem. This administration and COVID and the other crises made it a problem. And we still within our communities have to be sounding the alarm to stop people from dying unnecessarily.
I was asking earlier, I was going to say, has anything changed? You know, we recognize World AIDS Day every year, and we talk about the testing, but is there anything closer to, I guess, a vaccine or any type of treatment or cure? You know, are we getting any closer to it?
Yes, and things have changed, especially if you're white or have access to the privilege associated with whiteness.
Wow.
So we've talked about this on this platform before, PrEP. PrEP is a thing that has made it such that a lot of communities who were predisposed to HIV no longer have the anxieties around it because you can take a pill every day that reduces the likelihood significantly. In the last 4 years, in spite of the things that this administration has not done, there have been significant investments in people being undetectable. So what that means is that if you're living with HIV, if you're HIV positive, your viral load is suppressed such that when you take a test for HIV, it will not test positive, right? And so again, this is about your viral load being suppressed and you not being able to transmit HIV to a partner, to an intimate partner, even if you have unprotected sex. And so we know that people are thriving with HIV. I think now about Big Sean, who has a line that I didn't think Kobe would leave before Magic, right? Like, it is still a thing for us to remember that there are people thriving with HIV. And it is also the sad reality that in spite of the fact that Black people make up around 13% of the population in the United States, we're nearly half of all cases of HIV. And so the point I'm trying to make is that there have been progress for some. For some communities, we've seen the rates of HIV go down, the numbers of people who are undetectable increase, but it is still a problem in the Black community, and not just Black, queer, trans, and non-binary folks who we tend to think about when we talk about things like HIV, but Black, cis, heterosexual people. Black women, and I've said this before, Black women, right, are the most affected group of any women. And that is because we are still not having as many conversations as we should about stigma. We're not having as many conversations as we should about sexual wellness more generally. And we're not taking advantage of the medical advancements that exist.
Why aren't more people ringing the alarms about HIV and AIDS, though, David? Because I promise you, I really only hear about it when you come on the show for HIV, Awareness Day. I don't hear about it throughout the year.
Yeah, I think that there's not enough attention paid to conversations around HIV in popular media. And so while we have centered other things in media, for example, there's a lot of conversation about groundbreaking things like polls that have invited us to have more conversations about individuals with trans experience. The footnote here is that that has also increased violence. This year, we have seen more Black trans women murdered than any year since the data has been collected. We also celebrate the life of Monica Roberts, the trans griot who wrote these stories. But I'll offer that as an example to say that the media and others have been intentional in highlighting stories that we need to talk more about. The same attention has not been paid to HIV and AIDS. There's just not enough discussion about it. I think the second thing is that this year in particular, there were just so many battles to face, right, and to fight. Especially when you think about this last administration. To be clear, there's still work to be done in the new one. People are celebrating this new day, but we still got a whole lot of work to do. But I think that people were really distracted. And then the last thing is that the last administration was really destructive. He Who Shall Not Be Named disbanded the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS, PACHA, withdrew funds that had been invested prior to that administration, regardless of the political party of the person that occupied the Oval Office, and really seemed to be intentional, wanting to destroy all of the resources that the federal government had been investing. And so I highlight that again to say that while there are so many resources that exist, medical, social, scientific, and otherwise, there have still been people, including the occupant of the Oval Office, who worked against all of the science and knowledge that we know and should otherwise be employing.
This year for World AIDS Day, with us knowing all of that, and like you said, we are in a pandemic, and there's a lot of different things that people are worrying about. So what can we be doing this year on World AIDS Day to make sure that we show our support and that we continue to educate and spread that knowledge?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. If you can safely stop by Juices for Life, get yourself some juice, and make sure that you're attending to your wellness. The other thing is that everybody should think about testing at home. The scientific and medical advancements have made it such that you don't have to go to a clinic or a mobile testing unit to be tested. You can have a kit sent to your home and you can be tested. The concern there is that usually when we test, especially at places like Juices for Life or in public, we have experts there who are equipped to respond and support you no matter what the results are. Again, HIV is not the death sentence that it once was. There are people in our community who are thriving with it. And so having someone with you who's trained to support no matter what the response is incredibly important if you're going to test at home. And then the last thing is that people should do more of this. I'm super thankful to you all for being consistent in sharing this platform, because we need to start talking to stop HIV. That's not just a hashtag or a slogan. It's a real thing. And so I really hope that, I know today's a busy day. In addition to World AIDS Day, it's also Giving Tuesday, an opportunity to invest in nonprofit organizations like NBJC. And I hope that people have conversations. So talk with people that you're intimate with about their sexual practices, what they're doing to ensure that they are safe and well and enjoy sex. And then you can talk about what you're doing as well. People should be tested regularly. If you are having sex, you should be tested.
Right.
For everything, consistently, right? 3 to 6 months. And so I want to remind people to do that. And then if you need help, I acknowledge this is not an easy thing to do. We've worked through this. We've talked about language. We have a resource toolkit at nbjc.org. We provide language. We provide activities that you can follow. There are movies that you can watch, like 90 Days, which is a film about a heterosexual couple who deal with the topic of HIV in a way that I will not spoil. But all of this to say that there are tools to help anyone who desires to have this conversation.
I wonder if the messaging that people are thriving with HIV is helping or hurting. And what I mean by that is when you hear thriving, it's like, well, it's not a problem.
Possibly. I received that, possibly. When I say thriving, I hope to underscore and again, trouble this idea that people think that as soon as you test positive for HIV, then your life is over. That is simply no longer the case. And so what I'm talking about is that, like, too often when we think about HIV, we only think about the negative things associated with the trauma associated with it. Those things are important. We need to acknowledge that. And to your question, Charlamagne, like, we need to remind people that it's serious. Like, it is a virus, that it can attack your body if you don't do the things that we know will help you in order to thrive. And my hope is that I'm signaling to folks who otherwise might be scared to go get tested because they don't want to know the result, or they don't want to have the conversation with their partner, that it is possible for you to continue to live the life that you are enjoying while being HIV positive. But
Right.
you got to be connected to care. You got to be consistent with taking your medicine or being on the regimen that the doctor puts you on. You have to be supported by a community, including a partner who will be able to ensure that you do the things that you need in order to be able to thrive. And I think that's consistent no matter what somebody might be dealing with.
Do they have
And you
self-testing?
have to live
like
your life in secret once you know that you're HIV positive. And one thing I will say that's been really, a great experience working with you is that I actually have had people come up to me and tell me that they're HIV positive and say, thank you for the work that you're doing. And, I think that's great because I remember, just to your point, there was a time when people did not want anybody to know. It was like the biggest secret and it was something shameful. And the truth is that, yes, you can still live a, normal, happy, healthy life. You just have to at least go get tested so that you can make sure that you know what you need to do for yourself.
Yeah, there was a brother that came up to me after our last testing event. I believe it was in June, not this most recent June, the June before that, around the time of National HIV Testing Day, who pulled me to the side after he was tested, walked me right around the corner on the other side of that pizza shop, and cried and said, thank you. He said that he was so afraid to get tested. He didn't want to know the results. He didn't feel like anybody cared. But in particular, our testing partner was so careful with how it is that they delivered the message and connected him to care that he said, I feel like living is possible. And so, we just want people to know and to have access to information so they can make informed decisions and do what gives them joy. And so my hope is that everyone who's listening to this conversation thinks about the role that they can play in helping other people get free when it comes to HIV.
I was just going to ask, do they have self-testing kits maybe at pharmacies? Because I know it's difficult for a lot of people. They don't want to go to the doctor. They're scared. But also, it's COVID. Nobody really wants to go. People are scared of hospitals. They don't want to go by themselves. So do they have those kits in pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS?
They definitely do. They have them at pharmacies. And then they also are provided by community testing partners. So one of our partners has just been tested. They have a mobile testing service that they are still using, COVID safe. They're operating under those precautions, but they also are dropping off and mailing at-home testing kits to people who want them. And so encourage folks to hit us up, nbjc.org, so we can connect you to a testing partner in your city. If you also go to our website and put in your zip code, we'll help to find a testing partner near you. Again, free, but the answer to your question, Envy, is yes. No matter how you want to get tested, if you want your blood drawn, you don't want your blood drawn, you want to get swabbed, oral swab, like there are options to fit your anxieties and your needs.
Gotcha.
Every now and then I feel like an article comes out saying they found a cure for HIV. So how close is that to happening? Because I just saw something maybe a couple of weeks ago.
It does happen, and it's almost always about a white person in some clinical trial, and almost always not here in the United States. What we should all be mindful of is that this has been an effort that the pharmaceutical industry has been engaged in for quite some time. It is concerning to me that they have been able to find and test and soon produce publicly a potential vaccine for COVID, but we've not yet found a potential vaccine for HIV/AIDS. And so I'm just going to put that out there. We can talk about that at some other point. But suffice it to say, we don't know. There is not, at least that we know of, a cure for HIV. The closest thing we have is PrEP and PEP.
I was going to ask you how you felt about that. I saw that meme going around with people saying, oh, it's been all of these years, they haven't found a cure for HIV or cancer, but they got one for COVID in less than a year. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm struggling, clearly, right? My brother, LBJ, Larry Bernard Jr., is a principal of a school, Coney Island Prep in Brooklyn. And there's an article in the New Yorker that they published because they are suing the CDC. Essentially what he's saying is that the way that the CDC is not handled, they've mishandled the pandemic, has been negligible. And for me, it's an acknowledgement that there are some communities in this country that no matter what the crisis is, always get the resources that they deserve.
Right.
And it's no surprise that those communities are often identified by code, genetic code, or zip code. That's the way white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and capitalism works in this country. I don't fundamentally believe, as our organization as a partner with the CDC, that people are hiding or neglecting to do the work of finding a cure, but I still have concerns about the fact that it might not be at the level of a priority that it should be. And again, my hope is that the way that the industry or industries have moved to respond to COVID will be instructive for the ways that everyone should continue to respond to HIV. It should not be the case that we are still dealing with, at least in our communities, the devastating impact of HIV some 20 years after the introduction of the epidemic.
I want to ask you something before you go, David. I saw you post about Laverne Cox yesterday. What happened with Laverne Cox?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, super crazy. It is on her Instagram. It's also on mine. And I actually will be talking about this later today with Ebony Williams and Dustin. But the short is that,
podcast.
right. But the short of it is that Laverne was going for a walk, a socially distanced appropriate walk with her friend. They were in Griffith Park, a park that people who know California will be familiar with. It's featured in a lot of movies. It's a beautiful space. And the way that she tells her story, there was a person who seemed to be feeling some kind of way about something, asked them for the time in what she describes as an aggressive manner. And Laverne, she just paid it. She felt the aggression. She said, I was just going to keep on walking. But her friend who she was with, a male-identified person, responded, gave the person the time. And then the person responded, male or female, asking about Laverne's friend's gender. And then Laverne says, as she is watching this exchange happen, a fight breaks out. And so her friend ended up being attacked by someone who, the way she describes it, was itching for a confrontation. And so two things have come out of that for me that are really important. One is Laverne asked a question, and I asked the question too, like, what the fuck does the answer to that question matter? Like, what is the motivation for someone who is inclined to ask someone about their gender in that kind of way, right? Like, we talk often about inviting in. I hate the idea of coming out because I think it's some white people stuff, right? The idea and expectation that I owe you information is problematic. I don't owe you any information about me and how I show up in the world in the same way that you don't owe me any information. But if we decide to build a relationship and dialogue and get to know one another, I might share some things with you. And so this idea that trans people, queer people, non-binary people owe an explanation to other people, regardless of their identity, is beyond problematic. And so that's one. And then the second thing she asks is, what's the proper response when you are a victim of possibly a hate crime? And so she talks about having picked up her phone to call the police, and then the anxieties that Black and brown people have when we think about state-sanctioned violence and the frequency with which we are often victims of violence when we call for help. And then she also talks about the physical response. Her friend was in a fight with someone who could have overpowered them or killed them, and they could have become a hashtag. And for me, this is a reminder, again, in a year with incredible loss, that Black people too often don't have access to safe spaces. And in particular, Black trans, Black queer, Black non-binary, Black femme-identified folks do not have access to safe space. And so many times people feel entitled to come into that space and to cause them harm or trauma. And if we are going to get to a point where Black lives matter, all Black lives have to matter. And we got to fix this shit.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for checking in as always. We appreciate you, David John, on World AIDS Day. And thank you, brother.
Let's get free.
My pleasure. I appreciate y'all. Let's all get free.
Always a pleasure.